All right, welcome to the latest BuffZone podcast. I'm Brian Howell. Please be joined by my colleague once again, Pat Rooney. Pat, you're back from Kansas City, where you've been, there for basketball, Big 12 basketball media days this week, and we'll get to that here in a second. But it's crazy. It always seems like football just gets going, and then all of a sudden, it's second half of the season and basketball is going to get going. So this is always a fun time of year when the two sports overlap.
Yeah, I know. We always lament how fast the time goes, but it was good to be out there. I did go last year. It timed out well, kind of like you did with the football media days after the conference change was announced. I did go to the men's last year, but I didn't spend, both days there last year for the men's and women. So it was good to meet some people, some new well, not new sports information directors, but new to us, some of the
Yeah.
new media contacts and the people around the league. And, and for basketball, unlike the Pac-12, it was at the same venue where the Big 12 tournament will be in March. So kind of good to get the lay of the land and, you kind of see all the coaches in the league and see the Buffs out there. There were some former Buffs at the men's and the women's that I wrote about a little bit. So it's good to see them and just kind of interesting couple days. It's hard to believe, as we sit here now, it's less than 2 weeks coming up on a week from the season opener.
Yeah, and we'll have a basketball podcast before the season opener on November 4th for both teams. But yeah, I'm sure it was a lot of fun out there. And did it get you kind of juiced up for basketball? I mean, obviously you're our basketball beat writer, so I imagine that for you this time of year is like, all right, let's go, let's get some basketball going.
Yeah, I get a little like the players about halfway through the preseason. It's like, all right, what more are we going to write about? What more is there to do? Obviously, the Big 12 Media Day helps in that regard, but yeah, kind of ready to get the games going now. Obviously, we'll have more preview features coming out in the next couple weeks here. But always good to get the games going. There's a better flow to the season, and for both the men and the women with the Buffaloes, just kind of curious to see how these new look teams will fare going into the season. How quickly will they gel? It's kind of the new era of college basketball. This is the first time we've really seen this amount of newcomers, I think, combined for both teams in some time. So we'll get into the personnel a little bit more next week. Like Brian said, we'll do a basketball only pod ahead of those season openers that folks can check out. But definitely should be curious. I think both teams will be a little better than advertised in the Big 12.
Yeah, both teams were top end of the Pac-12 last year and projected for bottom half of the Big 12 this year. And we'll use that as a transition because another CU team that was projected for the bottom half of the conference was the football team, which was projected 11th. But here they are, sitting at 5-2, 3-1 in the conference as Cincinnati comes to town. Cincinnati is another team that was projected near the bottom. They were projected 14th, and they're also at 5-2, 3-1 in the conference. So, yeah, a couple of surprise teams that are going to hook up on Saturday at Folsom Field, and it should be a good one. Both teams are much better than people thought they were going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this stage of the season, you really have to give a lot of credit to head coach Deion Sanders and the staff he's put together. I was, among many who were just skeptical how well or curious maybe how well the new look coaching staff would gel. How the coordinator, new coordinators, Pat Shermer wasn't exactly new. He was with the program last year, obviously, and worked a lot with Shedeur Sanders. So was some familiarity there, but deserves a lot of credit across the board. That they're playing well. Robert Livingston, I wrote about this a little bit this week, last couple weeks. What a turnaround on that defense. They've gotten a little bit better every week. Phil Lodeho deserves credit with the offensive line. Pat Shermer, I thought maybe a little bit shaky start in the play calling department earlier this season. But the little wrinkles they've thrown in, even as they've dealt with a little bit of injury issues at the receiver spot, the ground game is getting better.
Mhm.
No credit across the board. Right now, this coaching staff has really gotten it done with this group.
Yeah, they've done a great job, and I thought last Saturday was, um, one of their better games. Obviously, you go out to Arizona, win 34-7. That was an Arizona team that they were projected top five in the conference coming in, and obviously have not been playing good football. They've been struggling under their first year head coach Brent Brennan, but um, we've seen CU teams in the past that haven't always taken advantage of those wounded type of teams, and this one did. They went out and really smacked the Wildcats around.
And the other thing they're doing well that goes along with what I was saying about the coaching staff, they've played really well on the road, which we
Yeah,
haven't seen around here in a long time consistently. They went up and got the kind of must-win game at Colorado State. Highly emotional, energetic rivalry game, and they went up there and won, kind of going away as the game went on, wore them down, and then Central Florida. And this past week were some of their best performances of the season. So really playing well on the road, and that again kind of speaks to the focus and the kind of week to week improvement that we've seen out of this group so far.
yeah, it's sort of an interesting thing watching this team. Um, you can break down offense, defense, all those things, but then you look at day and night, and when games start in the day, they play pretty well, and then when they start at night, which has been at home, they haven't been as good. And so they are 2-1 in the night game so far. We're talking about North Dakota State, Baylor, and Kansas State, but you look at all three of those games, and North Dakota State was kind of a I mean, that was the one that Deion Sanders walked in the post game press conference and said, do you ever feel like you won but you lost? So he didn't like how they
Yeah,
played in that
yeah.
one. Baylor, you kind of needed that miracle there at the end to get to overtime and win it. And then Kansas State, they lost, and against Baylor and K State, both those games fell behind 14-0, or down by 14 points in both of those games. And so here's another 8:15 kickoff, Pat, and they Deion Sanders acknowledged it this week. They've got to adjust some things and learn to play better at night. And so you hope that they can come out and do that. And I saw last night they practiced last night at Folsom Field. I think they're trying to do some things to acclimate to being on the field at night.
Yeah, and that's an interesting topic. We moan and groan about those late kickoffs, but that can't be easy for the players. They're sitting around all day. They do practice regularly in the morning.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting that it's not, that they're shaking things up this week. Probably a good idea.
yeah,
Can't hurt, right? And but we moan and groan about it. But that's tough, sitting around all day. I mean, maybe watching other college football, you're just thinking about it in your head. Probably hard to stay loose all day.
yeah,
So it's not ideal. But you know what? Both teams are doing it. So, and the other team's coming here to altitude, which you would think would give the Buffs advantage, especially as games wear on. You know, uh, but we'll see. We'll see if it happens this week. I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. Cincinnati's a team that's been playing well as well.
yeah. I mean, Cincinnati, they're 4 points away from being undefeated. Lost by 1 point to Pitt and 3 points to Texas Tech. Other than that, they've won. So they're a pretty good team. I mean, they've got some transfers as well. Not as much as CU, but 25 transfers they brought in, and includes their quarterback Brendan Sorsby from Indiana, who's doing pretty well. And he clearly wasn't going to be the starter at Indiana, who's doing quite well. Actually, but
Yeah.
he's coming to Cincinnati.
Go Hoosiers.
Yeah, he's coming to Cincinnati, and he's been great for them.
Yeah, they've been like you said, just a few points away from being undefeated. You're coming off a win against an Arizona State team that was playing pretty well, and coming in here with a lot of momentum as well. We did maybe thought this would be not a given. Cincinnati looked like they'd be a tough team, but as it turns out, it's kind of turned into a midseason bit of a separation game in that
Yeah,
Big 12 race.
yeah, and this is one I've said it, at different times, but this is one I never thought the Buffs had any gimme wins on their schedule, but this was one of the
Yeah,
four I looked at and thought you have to win that one. And the
sure.
other three were, excuse
Yeah.
me, North Dakota State, CSU, and Baylor. Well, they got all those three, but this was one I looked at and said, you have to get that one. Well, that's because I thought it was going to be an easier game than this, and Cincinnati's playing
Yeah,
much better. They still got to get it, but it's not going to be as easy maybe as I thought it would be in August.
yeah, yeah. Well, thoughts from you, Brian, on how you think this one will play out. Cincinnati's been pretty efficient on offense, defensively vulnerable against the run. Obviously, it's become a bigger complementary component for the Buffs recently, that run game. But do you see them maybe try to lean on that a little more this week, or do the Buffs do their thing and maybe pick their spots with that run game? Cincinnati's been vulnerable.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to do it. I mean, we've seen them try to get the run game going every
Yeah.
game, starting with CSU. Um, Kansas State was the one game where they weren't getting any traction early, and so they just kind of ditched it, and they got away
Yeah,
from
they
it.
threw it
But
out the window, but
yeah,
they got away from it, but they did at least come out and give it a shot.
yeah. So their track record over the last 5 games shows they're going to give it a shot. And Isaiah Augusta is going to get his start again. I like the way he runs. I think he's a guy that can get them off to a good start in the run game. So what'll be interesting to see is if they do get traction. If Cincinnati is shutting them down, then and they go away from it, that'll be one thing. But I think they'll be able to run against Cincinnati, and so I do think they're going to be able to get that ground game going a little bit. And Cincinnati's got some good DBs, but they haven't seen Shador Sanders and this receiving core. So I think
Yeah.
CU's offense, is primed to have no, I mean no pun intended, but primed to have a solid effort tonight or on Saturday night. And so I think it sets up well for the Buffs as long as they come out and play.
Yeah, and Cincinnati, I believe, has only recorded 3 interceptions defensively all season, which also bears well. They have been vulnerable defensively. They've been vulnerable against the pass defensively, and like you said, they haven't seen Shador Sanders yet.
Yeah,
And I agree with you on the run game. I would say if they don't get traction, I do think obviously they can run and will try to run the ball against Cincinnati. If by chance they don't get traction, no, I don't think this is a game where you should get away from it. I think this is the game where you got
yeah,
to keep pounding it and make it happen as the game goes on. Now, you say you don't need to run it 30 times. You do have Shador Sanders and those receivers, but I don't think and I don't I guess on the one hand, I don't think they're not going to find traction. I agree with you. I love the way Isaiah Augusta has been running the football. He's kind of, I don't know if he has a firm grasp on that number one, but he's certainly kind of the leader, down the stretch right now.
yeah,
So I would say it's his job to lose, maybe, as long as he keeps running the way he has been. Deion Sanders talked about it this week about how much he loves the way he's running the ball. So if that continues, and I think it'll continue against Cincinnati, he probably becomes your primary back. So, um, but I don't think they should get away with it. I do think they'll get traction early, but if by chance they don't, I think it's something you have to stick with in this particular game.
yeah, for sure. With Isaiah, two of his top competitors for that job, Dallin Hayden and Michael Welch, are both a little banged up too. So the opportunity is
Yeah.
there for him to really seize that job. And Welch has got the hamstring issue. Hayden looked okay last week, and so we'll see how he's doing. But I do think they got to get that run game going. Um, Cincinnati's run game, though, is pretty solid as well. The Buffs have got to stop the run.
Yeah.
Corey Kiner is a pretty darn good running back. He's not quite DJ Giddens that they saw a couple weeks ago with Kansas State, but he's a good running back. And so that Cincinnati offense can get some traction in the run as well. And the Buffs have been good against the run, but they've got to shut that down.
Yeah, going to be kind of interesting, and I've been very impressed with that defensive front, especially the last few weeks, and how it's really come along, both in the pass rush and stopping the run game. So certainly one of the matchups to watch on Saturday. Feels like it could be. You don't want Cincinnati to have a lot of success early in the run game. They'll get confident. They'll
Yeah.
start maybe moving line of scrimmage, and getting that thing moving downhill. So, maybe cliche to say want success early, but I think that'll be of crucial importance to that Buffs defense, especially up front, particularly against that run game early in this matchup.
Yeah, so it's going
How
to
do
be
you think it'll play out? Let's maybe get into predictions, Brian.
yeah. Well, two
Go
two
ahead.
straight two straight weeks of facing Wildcats. Now you face the Bearcats. So the schedule sets up. They've got experience now against Cats, so they should be able to go out and win this one. I do think they win the game. I give Cincinnati credit. They're playing well. A lot. I think these teams mirror each other in a lot of ways, and a lot of things you can say about CU, I think you can say about Cincinnati as well. And that, the Buffs, like we mentioned, projected 11th. They're gaining confidence. I think Cincinnati is the same thing. That was a team that was projected not
Yeah.
to be very good. They've got to be coming in here with a ton of confidence because of the way they're playing. So I don't think this is going to be an easy game for the Buffs by any means. I think it'll be a good football game, but I like the Buffs winning this one 30-24.
Okay. I'm kind of in line with you. I think it'll be a little higher scoring than that one, but I do think the Buffs find a way in the end. I think it'll be close. I agree with you. Two teams coming in here with a lot of confidence, and two teams that now feel like they should be playing a big part in the Big 12 race. And for the
Yeah,
winner of this one, obviously will have firmer traction in that race. Going forward. So it should be great. Didn't think this one would be a key one in the Big 12 race, but that's what's been fun about this league so far. You look at the way
right.
the preseason poll was set up and where we're at now. Um, I think the Bucks find a way. I think it'll be a little higher scoring. I was thinking 34-28 Buffaloes. It'll be a good game though. I think it'll be back and forth. And as we talked about, maybe the winner in the run game this week winds up the winner in the scoreboard.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely be a key. And you mentioned a separation game, and the everybody's trying to catch Iowa State and BYU that are undefeated in the conference, but the Buffs and Cincinnati are part of that four-way tie, one game back at 3-1. Texas Tech and K-State are also there. The Buffs have that loss to K-State, but they get Texas Tech in a couple of weeks. So there's an opportunity here over the next 2 weeks for the Buffs to really kind of separate themselves from a Cincinnati, from Texas Tech, and there's an opportunity here. So um, I like the Buffs to go out and get this one and seize that opportunity. So real quick, Pat, other sports, soccer and volleyball obviously are going on at this point, and so just give us a real quick rundown of what's going on with those sports.
Yeah, real quick, both volleyball and soccer at home on Friday night, and big ones too. So you got to kind of pick and
Yeah,
choose, unfortunately, folks. But volleyball hosted number 21 BYU. Volleyball have been playing a little better of late. They lost at Arizona State last weekend. Nothing to be ashamed of there. Arizona's a top 20 team, Arizona State rather. But they came home, really didn't follow up a recent win streak against West Virginia. It kind of fell flat maybe a little bit in that one. But and then now they got BYU, a tough one. Number 21 nation already lost a four-setter at BYU last month. So a big challenge for the volleyball team at the event center on Friday night. And soccer, soccer's reeling. It's been such an up and down season. They had a long
yeah,
unbeaten streak. Now are struggling down the stretch. No goals the last three games, but Friday night, a big and much needed regular season finale against Utah. They need to get a win, not just a tie. They need to get a win. They've fallen out of contention for a top four spot in the Big 12, which there is a conference tournament that gets going next week. That'll be a new thing. And so, still a chance to make some noise after Friday night. But they really need this win. They'll have a chance to do some more things at the conference tournament that they haven't been scoring goals. Shira James just came back from injury, kind of came off the bench in last one. I think we'll see maybe more of her tonight at home. Obviously, her last game, so I think she wants to go out with in a better way than kind of being sidelined for most of the stretch run here. So big games for both teams on Friday night, and soccer gets going in the Big 12 tournament next week.
yeah. So lots of big things coming up for all the CU sports, and as Pat and I mentioned, basketball is about a week and a half away from from tipping off, and we'll have a basketball podcast next week as well. But for now, Pat, Buffs need a win in football on Saturday night, and it'll be a big one. And I'll see you at Folsom Field.
Plenty of coffee for this guy throughout the day for these late kickoffs these days. So thanks as always, folks, for listening, and we'll do this again next week.